All right. Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I've got a special guest, decided to do another podcast. I know last week we talked with Susan, and that was cool. And we're trying to do a better job having more guests on, try to get people lined up more regularly. Today we have on Daniel Solomon. Am I saying your name right?
Yes.
Yeah. Daniel is a nutritional balancing practitioner, and we're friends on Facebook. And I've enjoyed a lot of his posts, and he's in the same line of work as me and Lewis are. And I think he has an interesting perspective on a lot of the same issues that we kind of delve into on this channel. And so I decided to have him on, and we talk about various topics. You want to introduce yourself, Daniel?
Yes, I'm out of Houston, Texas. I was born in Houston. I have two children, a girl and a boy, 5 and 6 years old. I was in the military, in infantry, so I have a little bit of perspective of some of the issues that a lot of the soldiers have, and just worked in various business jobs, sales, and stuff like that. About 4 years ago, I started the program. I was 27 years old. Had some extreme stress. I was in the military at that point in time as well. My first sodium-potassium ratio was 0.68. Okay, so I was very, had a lot of high manganese, high potassium. So once I started the program, took a little while, got better and better and better. I became a practitioner myself, studied a lot of Dr. Wilson's work, studied his book and everything like that. And I just try to incorporate nutritional balancing as a program and as a philosophy into every area of life. Just coming from my background and the people that I know growing up, seeing how it correlates with pretty much every aspect of our life to make everything more holistic.
Right. Cool. So you started off, you just didn't feel good? Like, were you out of the military at that point when you discovered nutritional balancing?
I was actually still in the military. The reason why I discovered it was because I was looking for some type of natural and alternative cures for sickle cell anemia. My son was born with sickle cell. Okay. So I also got him on the program. And I came across Dr. Wilson's articles. They were very, very difficult for me to understand. Difficult read. I hadn't heard anything like it before, as far as how minerals basically are the building blocks of the body and how they can manipulate the thinking, the thoughts, the emotions, and the will of a person. So I actually didn't feel all that bad. I really didn't feel that bad. Honestly, I was very athletic, played sports all growing up. And in the military, I was very, very physically strong and athletic. So I didn't think I was, or at least my awareness was not high enough at a point to understand how sick I really was.
Right.
Because we know, I mean, once your sodium potassium level gets below 1, you got some issues. So I went ahead and did it. And I saw that I wasn't as healthy and as strong as I thought I was, even though I was very athletic. Seemed like I had energy, which is what throws a lot of people off because they feel good. Of course, I was still in my 20s, so I felt good. But if I had not got on a nutritional balancing program along the line, would have had some serious issues as I got older, diabetes and different things of that nature. So that was the reason why I got on, and then I stayed on, and I've been on ever since. It's been about 4 years now.
Right. It's very interesting how so many people, they're not aware of really how sick they are, or even like their thinking is sick. And actually, I've come to experience this myself too, is that like awareness in and of itself kind of brings healing. Like the program in a way is like it's raising awareness. So you become aware that, oh, I have bad posture, or I'm aware that I'm not thinking correctly. You know what I mean?
And the biggest part to me was becoming aware of my behaviors and my thought patterns, thought processes. A lot of people do things that don't make any sense. And I would do things that just didn't make any sense, and I wasn't even aware that I was doing them at that point in time. So even on your maturity as you grow older, people still are very immature. 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s are still very immature, and it has a lot to do with the level of sickness or level of disease or level of toxins, nutritional imbalances that you have in your body. It makes you not think right.
Right.
So I look at some of the things that I was doing 3-4 years ago. I'm like, whoa, what was that crazy? I was like out of my mind. What was I thinking?
Right.
But at that point in time, it's, it's just everyday life,
Right, totally. What are some of your experiences in the military? I know there's definitely a lot of problems in the American military. They're forced to get vaccinated. The diets obviously aren't, as good as they could be. A lot of the bodies are just under immense stress, from lack of sleep and things like that. It definitely affects our military. I do believe our military is probably the healthiest military, but even then, there's so much that the American military could improve on.
Right. If the American military is the healthiest military, then all of the rest of them got to be terrible, because everything from the food, everything from the food to the training, it's all very unhealthy. Now, I was in infantry, okay, so it's slightly different. Combat arms is a little bit different than some of the non-combat. So that's all I really know. I can speak on.
Right.
We would eat MREs. Are you familiar with those, meal ready to eats?
Yeah, I've seen them on. I used to watch a lot of History Channel, like the military stuff. Like there's actually like the military channel. I know some about MREs.
Okay, if you've ever eaten one, you understand that it's supposed to be a meal that you eat in emergencies or something like that. If you can't get to real hot food, but in combat arms, we would be in the field. We would eat them 3 times a day, and we would eat them. And I was in Ranger School. We would eat those. We would eat them twice a day. They only fed us 2 meals a day, and they would feed us a meal maybe at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then another one around 4 p.m., something like that. And the meal ready to eats, they're not nutritious, just to say the least. They're not nutritious. Now that's one thing. Now that wouldn't be so bad, okay? Because over time, you finish your training. You do your training for a couple months, and then you go back and you're living your regular 9-to-5 military job. But the level of physical stress is probably the most when it comes to combat arms.
Right.
There's a lot of sleep deprivation, and there's just a lot of physical stress. So every quarter, yeah.
Well, that's super. That's like more intense than that's special forces, right?
It's not special forces. It's different. It's basically you'll have the same type of training, but special forces, once you get over all of the physical, what I would call hazing, you get into they train you in a specialty such as communications or something like that. But Ranger School is just basically all of the physical stuff, the grunt work. But then you have the regular infantry school, or the regular combat arms school, is very intense as well. So you have a lot of sleep deprivation, and quarterly we would do 12-mile ruck marches, and we'd have to do those in under 3 hours. So, we would be out at we'd start maybe about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd have to go 12 miles in under 3 hours, and we would have, I think our rucksack was about 30 pounds, and we'd have our rifle and our boots and everything. Now, after doing that for, some years, because you continue to have to do it, even though, the older you get, you continue to have to do it. It wears you out. It wears you down. And I saw so many of the older guys. When I say older, they weren't, in their 50s. These guys in their 30s that were broken down, had some serious knee problems, back issues, and all these types of things from overwork. And then on top of that, we had PT, we had training in the morning, which was just working out and stuff like that. And we have a lot of soldiers that are overweight, even with all of the training and the physical training that we do. They're overweight. Okay, the understanding is that, oh well, you're fat because you need to work out more, But we know that's not the case, right?
Right.
So that only depletes them even more. And probably I don't know if it's the worst thing, but maybe the worst thing is the mass vaccinations, because we take it's not even comparable to a regular human being.
Right.
A regular person walking around might get the flu shot every couple of years or so if they just feel like it. Okay, but in the military, it's multiple shots multiple times per year. So that also adds to the heavy metal toxicity, which when you put all these things together and you add that to the family life not being very stable because the guys are always away from the families, we're always training or deployed, you get a recipe for a lot of the suicidal behaviors of military soldiers that have been going on for the past, I don't know how long, a couple decades at least.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed in a lot of my experiences with military men too is they have a lot of self-destructive behavior.
Yeah.
Right. You know, a lot of like just driving cars way too fast while they're on drugs, or just you know, a lot of risk-taking behavior they have.
Yeah, the motorcycles and stuff like that. And we know that the more burned out your adrenals are, the more you have to whip them into shape so you can ward off depression. Okay, your adrenal glands are burned out, in which I mean, it's just a guess, but I would say anybody that's in combat arms in the military, I would say 99% of them have burned out adrenal glands. Right. And their behavior is synonymous with them being burned out. Their behavior, they go out and they're drinking a lot. You know, we drink a lot, we fight a lot, we do a lot of silly stuff that's completely unnecessary. Okay, until they get to a certain point, you know, maturity and getting older, they kind of slow down. But then at that point in time, they have to slow down because they're completely in exhaustion phase. They're completely exhausted. They're overweight. They have diabetes. They have all types of problems. And they're in their 30s. So it's very, the destructive behavior, I think, is indicative of their poor health and their adrenal gland being burned out, their kidneys and thyroid and all those things.
Right. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ranger School is similar in a lot of ways to Navy SEAL training, isn't it? It's like very...
No. I could not have ever done Navy SEALs training just because of the water. Ranger School, it's tough, just the same as Navy Ranger School. I mean, SEAL School. But I'm not a water person, so I would not have.
Water-based, but like physical requirements are pretty close, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Like I remember watching on the military channel, they have something similar to like Hell Week, don't they? Where they sleep deprive you for a week, and you have to march while you're sleep deprived, and they don't know food. Yeah,
you're sleep deprived your whole time there. It's 60 days. You're sleep deprived. In our first phase, we would. I think we averaged about less than an hour of sleep per night. So wow. You're sleeping anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour every 24-hour period.
Right.
So
yeah.
And there's no the thing about it is there's no recovery afterwards. Right. Okay. You come back and they call recovery you're off for a week, you're off for 2 weeks, and you can relax and do what you want. That's the recovery. But there is no program where there's diet and nutrition, you know, like a nutritional balancing program that's going to rebuild your body. So after Ranger School, these guys are maybe more mentally tough. I would say they're probably not, but from what they teach, you're more mentally tough, but your body is broken down. So all of the Rangers, by the time they are in their mid-30s, early 40s, extreme problems, and there's not enough attention being given to these guys because they go through a lot and they give a lot, they sacrifice a lot. And by the time they're 30, 40 years old and they're out of the military, you know, many of them are on the streets, you know?
Right. What do you think are some of the solutions to this problem? Because it seems to me for us, like the military and the type of training, like you do need that to a certain extent. You do need these sort of really vigorous sort of things that can, to an extent, build mental strength and character in young men. I think you do need that to a certain point. Do you think that in an ideal world you would kind of keep that physical intensity, but there'd just be more of a focus on nutrition and rebuilding the bodies afterwards, like what you talked about, that recovery week?
Yeah. I believe that yes, the some of the physical things that we go through need to be done, but some of it is just out of ignorance, and I feel that it is a lot of it is done to because of it's a lot of times it's a money thing, okay?
Right.
Because you have, say, for Ranger School, they had to make it as difficult as possible because they have to. There's more people that are signing up to go and reporting to the Ranger School than they have money for, than they have instructors for. So you may have 300 people go into Ranger School and they all have to report, but you only have enough spots for 75 people.
Oh, so it's a way to cut people.
So yeah, so you're, and it's very dangerous, because people get hurt and stuff like that. They're going without sleep, they're going without food and stuff like that. So just the organization needs to be a lot better, and then they can start to make smarter decisions. So we all know, I mean, you need to go through certain things to learn and to build your character, but once you can have better organization, which is it always boils down to the money in the military, then you will be able to create a program where you're not burning people out and just destroying their bodies. But the nutrition is non-existent. They
Right.
just recently started, some nutrition plans and stuff like that. It's in its infancy. It's only been around for, I would say maybe 10 years or so. And that's only because there's so many soldiers that are overweight and
Right.
fat. Um, but the level of understanding when it comes to, mineral ratios and toxic metals and all that type of stuff is non-existent. So that's a huge opening. And, it's difficult to get in there because it's a government run. But if they were to put programs in, for soldiers, nutrition and just your basic supplements is all they would need, and I mean, they have the money, but it's just how it's allocated. And it's just
Right.
the top people, what they feel is important, and do they care at all? That's another thing. Do they care about how many soldiers are dying and having these issues and having these problems, especially when they get out of the military? Because half of them, the guys that we see on the streets, are former veterans that were expected to give up their lives if need be, and now they need help and nobody's there. So um, starting the nutrition plan, getting some guys that have a little more understanding on not going too far. It's basic common sense for to me. It's common sense, but when it becomes political, everything is not common sense. It's one of the things we used to talk about in the military, that if it makes sense, we're not going to do it. That's how they approach things. They're talking about the higher ups, the people that we can't see. The guys on the ground, we're always like, why are we doing this when we could easily do this? Well, it's not our decision. It's people that are making millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and they're making decisions for all the thousands of us guys on the ground. So it's a tough thing to fix because we'd have to start from the top.
Right. Totally.
Now, if there was some type of outside organization that was able to partner with the military, and they would be in control of the nutrition plans, of the mental health counseling and all that type of stuff, I think that would work a little bit better.
What the government does hire private contractors in those sort of fields sometimes, don't they? Like I remember reading that they had hired some outside nutritionist at one point to help deal with the obesity problem, help redesign some like the caloric intakes of some of those MREs.
Yeah, they do. And it's your basic.
It's probably fairly difficult to get in.
Yeah, but it's your basic. The nutrition is very, let's say, basic. It's very kind of elementary. Eat your fruits and your vegetables. And now cutting out, they do tell people to cut out carbs, which is good and stuff like that. But it's nothing that addresses the severe toxic metal poisoning that most of us have. There's nothing that addresses that because they just don't have the knowledge on it. So if you
Right.
are, you tell a person he's already obese, his adrenal glands are already completely destroyed and fatigued. His body is accumulating all of these toxins and all of these metals because we're out with the machinery and stuff like that all the time. So we're ingesting it. So if we already have low level of thyroid function, then we're just accumulating more lead and cadmium and all that type of stuff. And this is the reason why we smoke, or why a lot of guys smoke cigarettes.
Oh, right. Yeah, the cadmium, definitely.
Right. Especially when we're out in the field, it gives us that extra energy. It helps us to stay up. And people, they chew a dip. I didn't like chewing dip. That was disgusting to me. But the people would chew dip, or they would smoke the cigarettes, or they
Right.
smoke the cigars to just help them get going. And it works. It works. But when they turn 50 years old, they're no longer functional.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully, there are some openings. I think that the current leadership right now in the American military is a little bit more results based. So if you could just get a situation where they see the results of these sorts of programs and they do come to the conclusion that, we're basically producing better soldiers that can be better on the field, and it's actually, better for us, if they come to that understanding and see the results, then they can, kind of proliferate more into the military.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. There has to be some case studies done. There has to be some money allocated, whether it's through grants or through a nonprofit organization or some type of organization that can get a large case study of soldiers throughout the throughout the branches, male and female. And once we get that, then the results are undeniable. Okay, then they can start throwing more money into it, and
Right.
from there, it should be a lot better. But that's what must take place. But the knowledge needs to be there. Okay, it can't
Right.
just be eat your fruits and vegetables, and eat your
Right.
frosted flakes and stuff like that. That'll do a little bit, if they're cutting out some of their pizza and cutting out some of their beer every night. But it's not going to do what needs to be done. It's not going to be a big enough effect for anybody to put any money into it. Until you start to see those metals coming out of their body, until you start to see their adrenals and their thyroids start to heal, and they start to, give testimonials of how much better they feel and how much clearer they think, then that's when we're doing something.
Right. I mean, if they were really smart, ideally, they would actually take like 15, 16-year-old men that wanted to sign contracts and wanted to enter in the military when they turned 18, and they put them on programs 2 or 3 years before they entered the military, so they were stronger. You know what I mean?
Good idea. Yeah. I didn't think about that. That's perfect.
Yeah,
That's
that would
perfect.
be best, because then they'd be much healthier once they entered that sort of stressful environment. Their bodies could handle it better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and their lives would be better. You see, combat arms, man. It's like guys that work out in the oil field and stuff like that, and they're around chemicals their whole lives, 10, 20, 30 years. They start to just go off. Their mind starts to leave, and they start to do weird stuff, and they always end up having 3, 4, 5, 6 wives and stuff like that, and they may make $2,000 in a week or a few days, working, and then they blow it all in the bar and stuff like that. Those are some of the things that the combat arms guys do because of their brains is just so contaminated with the lead and the cadmium and everything else. So lowering all that stuff, even starting before the military or during or after, will increase the complete quality of their lives.
Right.
And their family, children.
Right, and it'll help with things like with our veterans. So many of them suffer with, like we were talking about, PTSD and stuff. And there's a huge society burden. There's a huge burden on our society taking care of these veterans that have all these problems. And so that's another sort of thing that we can help is like by putting military men on these programs, we're saving a ton of money because we don't have all this sort of like societal burden from our veterans.
Right, but will the then you're coming into competition with the pharmaceutical industry and their drugs for PTSD and all those types of things. So that's another can of worms when it comes to trying to help the veterans that have come out of the military. that may be a
Right.
roadblock, but
Yeah,
it's worth a try.
Right, right. And what I'm very interested in also is, like, some of the viewers know that I do hope to start my own lab, and I think a very interesting idea is where you pay either the people in the military or just other people, like people with AIDS, or what we're talking about, sickle cell anemia. You actually pay these people to let them basically go on a program, right? So you actually pay them. You say, I will cover the cost of the hair test. I will cover the top cost of the supplements. But in return, you're required to do the program that I lay out for you to the best of your ability, and then document it, and we're documenting it together. And then you see if you like the results, you know what I mean? And then
Exactly.
we can work together, past that, if you like the result that you're getting with these 1 or 2 or however many patients that I'm paying for.
Right. And then you have those case studies, and then you can you look for investors, and
Right.
you apply for grants and different things like that. So that's excellent.
Right.
It's an excellent idea.
Right. I think that might be some of the best way to, like, get into the military is, but yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of solutions, and hopefully it can just, we can get some of that science and really help people in the American military.
Yeah, and just getting the knowledge out there. Just getting the knowledge out
Right.
there. It's like going from basic basic science in high school or in middle school, you jump into quantum physics. When you're comparing a nutritional balancing program and everything that goes with it to just your average standard, the pyramid of what you're supposed to eat, your grains, whatever the pyramid is called. It's a big leap, and a lot of people are skeptical of it, in the beginning. But once we get those case studies, once that proof is shown, there's no denying it. There's no denying it. And then people will start to be trained on this and stuff. Guys that are in school for biology and they're in school for chemistry and stuff like that, and they already understand the basics. These guys will be able to apply that to nutritional balancing and learn it on a much deeper level. Like me, I learned it just by reading the book and just by looking at the articles. I had no science or mathematics background or anything like that. But somebody that's been in school for that, these people that are inclined towards health, science, biology, chemistry, and all those types of things, these people will be drawn to nutritional balancing once they see the case studies prove the results. And then once we get the few of the right people, and then we get a few more people who are good at the business side and the marketing aspect, then it will grow and more people will be helped, because it's wide open. It's completely wide open when it comes to health, healing, and disease prevention and correction.
Right. What are your views on nutritional balancing as a sort of like culture shift?
Well, it's definitely a culture shift. It kind of depends on what type of culture you lived prior to starting it. For me, it wasn't very difficult. Because many of the behavioral and cultural things that are taught in nutritional balancing, I was pretty much already accustomed to. Mm-hmm. I've always been, more of a conservative type of person as far as how I live my life, and that's what's taught in nutritional balancing. But a lot of people, they have to get used to it. It may take some time, may take some years, but it's very, very, it's very safe and it's very effective when you're wanting to have a functional and profitable, productive life, because it does talk about every area of life. It talks about your family life. It talks about how you should go about studying and applying yourself in different areas of life. So it is something that I think would fit into any culture, into any group of people, because the principles are principles that are the world over. They're timeless
Right.
principles, I guess I could say. They're timeless principles. So they would fit into any group of people who still have common sense and have a conscience left. It would fit into that. And it's just a reminder of the way that you should live and how to be more productive in your life.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's so true. And it really does, healing does touch every sphere of life. How we eat and drink, the people we keep company with, our thoughts, the way we process our thoughts, everything. I'm interested to hear you talk as a minority in America. What is your thoughts on the current political climate? What do you think of the Trump administration so far?
I haven't really paid too much attention. I have heard here and there about the Russia stuff and all those things. I kind of I see those as distractions because I feel as though from every president that's come along for the past few generations, the same things are being pushed, the same agendas are being pushed. Therefore, I don't get involved in the little minute drama here and there because to me it seems like it's distracting from a larger goal or end goal of the elite or the people that run all of the money and run the world to totally enslave people. I see a consistent pattern of demoralization of Americans. So, we have certain laws against, little things. I mean, we have to wear seat belts or we get a ticket and we have to do little this, a little that. Okay, but the government allows pornography to be posted for free on the internet.
Right.
So that your children can get hooked on pornography and their innocence can be stolen. And when their innocence is stolen, their whole chakra system is thrown off. The root chakra is thrown off. So they have less adaptive energy and they have less, their chi, their aura, all that type of stuff is fractured, is punctured. The more of their innocence is lost. So these things have been progressively pushed by everybody. Nobody stopped it. No matter if it's been a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, nobody stopped any of these things. And then we have, currently the big transgender push, stuff like that. So the demoralization of the country amongst everyone, okay, I think it started more so with the Black American community as, I would say, maybe a testing ground back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and so forth. But now it's spreading on to the entire America and attempting to be spread to the world.
Right.
So those are the things I focus on. And I know that the money system, it's since the Federal Reserve is not tied to the American government, there's really nothing that any politician can do to change the money system, because the money system is run by people who have no allegiance to our government.
Right. Yeah, and I think you made an interesting point too. I do think a lot of these policies, I think inner city Black communities served as test beds for a lot of this stuff. Like one thing that as a conservative drives me crazy is I see white liberals really get behind Planned Parenthood.
Right.
Planned Parenthood is killed more Black people, more Black babies than anything else combined by tenfold.
Exactly. And
Planned Parenthood literally is Black inner city genocide.
Exactly. And those who get behind it, they're not thinking right. They don't think properly. And I used to get upset, with people like them, but it's no point anymore because they just don't know. They're like children. Okay, so the projects that the Black people were put in many years ago, I think they started building them in the 60s. They were called projects for the specific reason that they actually were projects. They had large video cameras and stuff like that, surveillance in the projects when they first put families in there. And one of the things that they did And we're seeing this now amongst all of the races in America, the breakup of the family. But it started with the black family. Now the projects were an experiment to see how things would work when the man was removed out of the home. So they actually, I mean, there's books written about this as documentaries. They actually had, in the 60s, they had hidden cameras. They would have them in the walls. They'd have the hidden audio, and they would survey and see exactly what happens to these children and these people generation after generation from the project. And they use that as I guess, as a case study for how they would expand their plan and how they would refine it, make it better, make it a little more subtle. And we have what we have today with 75 or 75% of black children being born out of wedlock. And every other race, the rate of divorce, the rate of children born out of wedlock is increasing exponentially. So they started with us, but it's creeping into everybody else, because the more demoralized the nation is and the less male leadership that you have in a family or in a community, the easier it is to control the entire populace. Very, very easy after you do that.
Right. It's so hard to even talk to. Like I live in California, right? And so I live, there's
the land of the conservatives, right?
No, yeah. It's like the young people that I'm around, it's so hard to even talk to them about, something like that. Like to even say that there should be like male leadership or something like that. It's just so foreign and so repulsive to them.
It's a trigger word. They start shaking and having seizures and stuff. It triggers them. Yeah.
It's like how dare you say that a man does have certain leadership qualities that are best in a lot of circumstances. You know what I mean? There's just
and it's something that was systematically programmed. It was programmed, and I forgot the guy's name, but they put billions and billions and billions of dollars into propaganda programming through the media. And they will come up with stories and different things of that nature, like the whole Kris Jenner thing. What's his name? Kylie Jenner or
Caitlyn?
No,
Caitlyn.
Caitlyn.
Yeah.
Bruce Jenner, former Bruce Jenner. We all know that there were transsexuals way before Bruce Jenner.
Right.
I mean, they had them, back in the 70s and 80s and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's to open the floodgates to the children. You see, all adults knew about transgender people, but we protect our children from knowing anything about that. But now, since it's out in the open, they get him to be the spokesperson, and then they start bringing it into the school systems. Okay. Now, here in Texas, that type of stuff is not taught. But I see in a lot of states, I've watched a lot of videos where they come in and they teach the whole LGBTQ propaganda to the children in school. It's not here in Texas, but it's out there.
Yeah, in places like Oregon, certain places in California. And then the next step of the left is also normalizing pedophilia. That's the next.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's the next step. And you already see sort of they try to do it here and there. They haven't made their full push yet, but they did. I don't think they'll ever be able to really make their full push because there's too much blowback. A lot of people don't talk about, but the Trump administration, there's been so many pedophilia arrests. You don't hear about it on CNBC or CNN, but they're really going after people don't realize how extensive this sort of pedophile network is, even in America. Well,
that's a good thing. They need to, but the problem is, from what I've studied, the largest rings of the pedophile rings are amongst some of the most powerful people.
Right.
Some of the most people who that are CEOs and things, who are movers and shakers in the world. So it's difficult. It's one thing to arrest your local pedophile here and there. That saves a few people, but there are thousands of people that go missing, thousands of children that go missing every day in this country. Exactly. Or at least every few months. I can't remember the actual numbers, but it's hundreds of thousands that go missing.
I've worked with women that has happened to as children.
Wow.
People don't understand what happens. It's horrific. Absolutely the worst things you can possibly imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there would have to be, I hope they continue. I hope they continue and go for the larger fish, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. People that are engaging in that, the conscience is gone, so they can't be stopped. They have to be forcibly stopped, or
Right.
they won't stop themselves. So hopefully they will continue that. I hope so. But then you have to dismantle some of these organizations such as NAMBLA. You have to dismantle. You have to start going after the pornography industry, which is very difficult because they bring billions of dollars into the economy.
Yeah, when I was younger, I was much more libertarian. I was really into like Ron Paul, and I was much more libertarian. Like there should be like freedom of pornography, and like drugs should be legal. And I was really like into freedom, you know what I mean? But I was definitely more libertarian. And it's interesting, as I mature, I get more and more like socially conservative.
Right.
I realize more and more as I get older that like freedom is good, but if laws are rooted in truth, then those are necessary. It's not a bad thing to outlaw pornography. That it does take away people's freedoms to make pornography, but that's not a bad thing for society. It's not a bad thing to even tax like candy and soda and stuff, so that children don't have access to these things that harm their bodies. If laws are actually reinforcing truth, I've come more, to that realization that there is a place for these societal laws.
Right. And that comes back to why, and this is common sense for anybody. Okay, we're both young people, and we have these politicians and people who are, in their 40s and 50s, and they've supposedly done so many great things in their lives, but yet they're not adhering to just common sense that anybody, that it was raised decently should know. The problem comes in, they know this, but the problem comes in when the money is involved. See, pornography produces billions of dollars, puts billions of dollars into the economy. But there's also, I think, with that issue there's more behind the scenes. I think it's part of a greater plan to demoralize the country, like we were talking about earlier, because much of the pornography now is free. So you have to ask, how are they making money? They're still moving trillions of dollars,
right?
But everything's for free,
right?
So there's somebody there. There's some companies that are funding this. They're investing and they're funding it for the specific reason of getting it to ultimately the children. Because once you sexualize the children, then it's easy to open them up for pedophilia and bestiality and all that other stuff that they want.
Right. And it's so hard for a lot of young men. I experienced this as a young man. Like when you're 12 or 13 and you discover pornography on the internet, the male brain was never designed to have access to any sort of lewd images it could possibly conceive of by the click of a button.
Yeah, it's devastating. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, I think I was probably about 10, 11, 12 or something like that at that point in time too. It's traumatizing. You don't know it at that point in time.
Right.
But as you grow older, you see how that traumatized you. And it distorts your thinking, and it could distort your thinking for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and it distorts your perception of women and what a woman should be too.
Exactly. And then now when we change that to these children viewing these things at 5, 6, 7 years old, 8 years old.
Right.
And then we have what we have today in the school system. Because I was a teacher. I taught for a couple years in middle school, and these kids are more sexualized, and they're worse than me. Like I was like, man, you guys know more than I do. They're like 12, 13 years old, right? But their parents don't know that. Their parents don't know. It's very sad because parents think that their children are little angels, or they think that they protected them. But once you give your child a tablet with the internet on it, everything's free game. You don't know what they're looking at. And you give them a phone with the internet on it, you don't know what they're looking at, and you don't know who is propositioning them. It may be an accident.
Right.
But once that Pandora's box is open, it's not going to be closed easily.
And a lot of these things are like we talked about, actually sinister, and they're planned out. Like, have you ever read Brave New World?
I've never read it, but I've read a lot of commentary on it, and I've heard a lot of people speak about it.
Right. Well, and one thing in Brave New World, similar in some ways like 1984 and a lot of these sort of things that are kind of speaking against like what a future society, like totalitarian society, might look like and how to prevent it and stuff. But in Brave New World, what they do is they have sex games for the little kids, and the little kids, when they're like 5 and 6 years old, they're and it's part of their social condition. In Brave New World, it's part of their social conditioning, because if you're able to sexualize children at a young age, they're much easier to control.
When was that book written?
Like I don't even know, but it was like the 50s.
It's like the 40s or something.
Or 30s or something. Like it was decades and decades ago. But it's similar to like some of these other books, like 1984. These authors were very smart men, and they knew where society could sort of lead and how you could control your fellow man.
Wow, that is amazing. And that's exactly what they have.
Yeah,
that's exactly what they have. I mean, in some states, in some some school districts, they give children literature on how to perform certain sexual acts, how to do it safely.
Right.
Sexual acts that they would never even thought to do on their own. But see, back in that time, in the 40s and stuff like that, when these books were written, you had guys like these authors knew the plan.
Right, they did.
They knew the plan.
I think they knew it intuitively, partially.
I think partially they knew it intuitively, and also I think they knew it because they found out at some point. Because you had during that time that you had Alfred Kinsey, who was writing the books on childhood sexuality, and his work is what a lot of the sex education is based on today. And he actually got funding from universities, got funding from the government to perform scientific experiments, which included sex with children. You would have people that would have adults have sex with children, and this is completely legal. And there's whole documentaries on this. There's books on this, and it's kind of like the Kinsey. The Franklin cover up. You ever heard of that?
No.
Oh man, they get into that as well. But the plan was planned out then. You know what I mean? I don't think these guys are winging it as they go along. I think this has been planned maybe for 100 years or more. I don't know. But I think this has been planned, and they're going step by step, and they make alterations here. When they come to a roadblock, they make a alteration, but they continue with the plan. So
yeah, totally agree. And then going back to what we were talking about too, this sort of anger and everything masculine, I've come to realize that, like, masculine energy is like a certain frequency. There's actually a masculine sort of energy, and a lot of these young people they're mad at the father energy. It upsets a lot of people to know this, but God in itself is a more masculine energy.
Right.
And I see this when I actually teach people the meditation too that we practice in nutritional balancing. Like when you do the pushing down exercise, it's a more masculine sort of energy. And many people, even though they don't even know it, they're angry at that energy. And interestingly, I see it in a lot of young people's reaction to Donald Trump. Donald Trump actually has a pretty strong like masculine energy about him. You can see like he like takes risks. He's in charge. He doesn't really care what the media thinks. He's just going to do what he's going to do, right? And that actual frequency is repulsive to a lot of young people. They actually hate that frequency. It feels bad to them because they're so far the other direction. They're so far the other direction. That frequency actually feels revolting to their like system.
Absolutely, and you can see that as if you were a man who, if you take a lot of women, especially a lot of women in the Black community, because we've been worked on a lot longer, you will see that men that are effeminate or men that are full-blown homosexual or bisexual, they get along great with the women. The women are best friends with them. Okay, they forgive them for all their faults. They allow them to say certain things. They allow them to insult them. They allow them to do all types of things. But then you have to take a man that has masculine energy. Any little thing that he does is upsetting to her. Any little thing that he does. So when you have a man that is wise and that he says what he means, and that he has a plan, the whole nation has been put into that mindset of that is oppressive. That's oppressive. Not knowing and not understanding that the feminist movement was not started by women. It was started by men. It was started by men who were funded by the same people who own and control all the money in this world. Why? Because you know that if they take out the male figure, they take out the father figure or the masculine energy, that everybody else is going to be easily controlled, because then the father will be the government, or the government will be, or the elite, the people with all the money, they will be the father, and they would dictate to you what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And then they've conditioned people to accept that, but they're not going to accept their own father or their own masculine energy of the person that raised them, or the person that they know and they trust, or they don't trust them, but the father loves them, but they would rather substitute that with some imaginary, invisible force that's telling them that you need to do this and you need to do that. More taxes, you know, you're living paycheck to paycheck. Every single year is getting more difficult for you to survive, but yet you're still going to bow down to them because they are the authority figure.
Right. That's actually one reason why I don't want to go too deep into this topic, but that's one reason why things like Bitcoin and stuff really excite me, and I teach people about Bitcoin, is because it actually takes away power from central banks and stuff. And actually, using mathematics, you can actually have complete control of your wealth, and no one else can tell you what to do with it or where to spend it or anything. And actually is going to, the trust machine of a blockchain, I think, is going to, you know, cause a lot of upheaval and these sort of cause a lot of freedom for mankind, which is, you know, I think cool. But also going back to the sort of anger at the father energy, that's why everyone needs the pushing down exercise. You know, a lot of people, I think even practitioners, make the mistake, you know, they don't realize that when you're doing the pushing down exercise, you're literally bringing that masculine energy into your body. And for many of you that are going to be watching this, you have to realize that you might be angry at that energy and you don't even realize it. And so for a lot of my clients, I've realized that actually doesn't feel good to them at first.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The meditation, you know, me and you might have different experiences with it. It always felt good to me. But a lot of people, it doesn't feel good at first because it's like not the frequency that their body's at, and it just brings up so many untruths so quickly. You know what I mean? But
yeah, my experience with it, I do the push down exercise, but I've never. It's always been positive for me. It's always been positive. And I know a lot of people say that, you know, different things come up. I've never had really anything come up during that time, but you know, the funny thing about it
has always been, you know, you probably weren't quite as sick as a lot of people, to be honest. I think that you've probably always had at least pretty good mental clarity about things, at least compared to a lot of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the thing about it is, things will come to me later.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
so I'll be doing it, and then you know, it's nothing. I'm just doing it, and hey, I go to bed or whatever. You know, but then the next day or the next morning or at some point in time, you know, I just put things together. I don't really even put them together. It just comes to me.
Right.
Like, wow, you know, why didn't I understand that like 5 years ago? Like, you know, things could have been a lot different. It's common sense, but it just comes to me. But for me personally, doesn't happen while I'm doing it. But then later, I see the benefit of it. So, you know, it's different for different people, but it's definitely necessary.
Right. It's such an incredible feeling, you know, when you receive that sort of guidance and intuition, like that moment of clarity, like, well, oh, that's why that's the way it is. Duh. It's such a beautiful feeling.
Exactly.
Right. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Do you have anything else that you wanted to say to the viewers? Where can people find you?
My website is humandevelopmenttodayandbeyond.com. Daniel Solomon, that's my name on Facebook. So you can friend me there if you have any questions or anything like that. Pretty soon I'll be looking for some children with sickle cell. I want to do some case studies on that. My son has responded very, very, very well to the program, and he has sickle cell. So anybody who does or knows anybody with it, you can contact me with any of your questions, and I can give you some of the experiences I've had with my son on the program. So that's it.
Yeah. If any of you guys, have sickle, if your children or anyone has sickle cell, point them towards Daniel, and he'll definitely work with you, to try to get that resolved, because we do see a lot of benefits with these sort of things that people think are uncurable or can't be helped, but but they can be helped just from simple programs. Some of these, quote unquote incurable diseases or genetic, things that are genetic, and you can't do anything about your genetics. The program helps a lot of these things, and this will come out more and more, and well, I want to thank you so much, Daniel. It was really fun talking to you about all these different and everything.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and end it.